In this episode, we're going to look at how to connect a router to a LAN. I'll show you how to do it and have a discussion of the concepts along the way. In this activity, we'll use various show commands to display the current state of the router. We'll also then use the addressing table to configure router Ethernet interfaces. Finally, we'll use commands to verify and test our configurations. We'll be discussing display router information, configuring router interfaces, and then finally we'll verify that configuration. Greetings to all my tech heads out there in the KevTechify nation, and if you're new here, welcome. This episode is part of my series on configuring examples for the CCNA. I'm Kevin here at KevTechify. Let's get this adventure started. Connect a router to a LAN. Here I have our packet tracer file opened up on the left side. We have our topology. This is where we'll be configuring our devices. On the right side, I have our packet tracer activities windows. Bottom right is the actual packet tracer activity window that comes from packet tracer itself. I have this one open to check my results. As you notice, there's multiple steps to complete in here. So eventually it will show 100% when we're done with the lab. The upper right is the Word document that allows me to come into here and put my answers into there. I have all of these open, so I go ahead and use them all at the same time. Starting off here, we have our addressing table. It says what devices, what interfaces, what IP addresses are all set up there, what PCs we have. We have that all configured. Now, there are three parts to this lab. We're going to display some router information. We're going to look and see how it's set up. We're going to configure the interfaces. We're going to put some IP addresses on them, descriptions. And then once we're done with that, we're going to verify what we just did. Down here to part one, display router information. Step one, display the interface command on R1. Notice these are our passwords. Our passwords here are Cisco class. First question is which command displays the statistics for all interfaces configured on the router? Well, we are looking at interfaces here, and anytime we're displaying any information or statistics, it's the show command. Now, I'm going to go up here, I'm going to click on R1, I'm going to go into the CLI. Notice we are at a place right here, it says press return to get started. I'm going to go ahead and do that. There's a password here. Once again, this means that there was a saved startup config file. It loaded it on boot up, and we have to log into it. Over here in our packet tracer activities window, that's our passwords are Cisco and class. I'm going to go ahead and type in Cisco. There we are logged in. I wanted to get into privilege exec mode. That's where we type enable, and then the password there is class. We are in there. Notice our prompt is at the hashtag $sign at that point in time. Now, which command here displays the statistics for all interfaces? Now, what we want to do is use the show command anytime we're displaying statistics and we're dealing with interfaces. I would start off with show interfaces. Show space interfaces. Go ahead and hit enter. There is some information about our interfaces. Notice we have gig 01 here, administratively down, line protocol is down. We have the more symbol. I'm going to go ahead and drag this window a little bit bigger so we can see all of this. We have the more symbol still. We're on our second gig interface. More, you can either hit enter, takes you down one line, or spacebar takes you down another. We're getting into our serial interfaces, fast Ethernet interfaces. Like we have 4 of those. Takes us down. We have our VLAN configuration. And to the end. Which command displays the information only about serial 000 interface? Okay, first we got to go back and answer question A. That was show interfaces. Now, the command here that shows just about serial 000 interface is very similar to the one from up above. But that command here is show interface S And we want to see 0/0/0/0. There it is. Hit spacebar, get us down. Only shows us the information for serial 000. Show space interface. It's not interfaces at this point, it's interface because you're only dealing with one. And then S0/0/0. There you go. Question C. Enter the command to display the statistics for the serial 00 interface on R1 and answer the following questions. That was the command we just entered right here. What we can do is use up arrow, puts that information there. I'm going to hit the space bar till it's all gone. What is the IP address configured on R1? The IP address right here, once again, we have serial 00. We look down, 2 lines down is right here. So our IP address is that number, which is 209.165.200.225. And then we put our slash number on the end that says what our subnet mask is. It's /30 at that point in time. What is the bandwidth on serial 0000? Should be only 3 zeros there. If we look through here, we look through some more. Right down here, we have the BW. Our BW is 1,544 kilobits per second. Bandwidth for this interface right here is 1,544 kilobits per second. Is equivalent to 1.544 megabits per second, which is a T1 line. So that's not a random number. That does mean a certain type of interface. Enter the command to display the statistics for gigabit Ethernet 00 and answer the following questions. Well, it's very similar to the command we entered above. Show interface. And then we want G0/0. Go ahead, hit the space bar, takes us down the information. What is the IP address on R1? Looking down through here, this is the hardware address. Looking through here. I'm not seeing one. What's happening here? We have hardware, we have our MTU with our bandwidth, we have encapsulation, we have our keepalize, we have full duplex, media type is an RJ45, output, ARP type, input, clearing of the stats, and it's not giving us an IP address. It could be that the IP address isn't set right now. And because we're not seeing one, not there, so we're going to say, question reads, what is the IP address? None, because it is not set. What is the MAC address of gigabit 00 interface? Well, if we looked up here, this is our hardware address right here. This is it. Once again, Cisco displays it. The 12 hexadecimal numbers is a set of 4, a period, a set of 4, a period, and a final set of 4. And so our MAC address is 000D dot BD6C dot 7D01. 7D01. What is the bandwidth of the gigabit 00 interface? Bandwidth, this is the bandwidth right here. We have 1, 2, 3, have another 3 zeros, so we have 6 zeros led by a 1. We have 1, I'm going to put the commas in here, 1 million kilobits per second, or this is a gigabit interface. If we notice right here, that's the speed that it says our hardware is a gigabit Ethernet, 1 million kilobytes. There we go. Display a summary of all the interfaces on R1. What command do you use to do this? It's similar to the show interfaces, except we do it a little bit different. Here, it's show IP interface and then brief at this point in time. That command will give us a nice little formatted output of that. So show IP int brief. That's how you can abbreviate it. Show IP int br. Go ahead and put it out there. And now it lists all of our IP addresses. Enter the command on each router and answer the following questions. How many serial interfaces are there on R1 and how many are on R2? So we're on R1. R1 has, if we go down here, they're asking for serial interfaces. Right here, we have 2 serial interfaces. So 2 serial interfaces. Seeing as I'm on R1, I'm going to go ahead and just answer all these questions. For R1, how many Ethernet interfaces? Well, we got 2 gigabit Ethernet, and then we have 4 fast Ethernet. So we have a total of 6. Of which 4 were fast Ethernet and 2 were gigabit Ethernet. Are all the Ethernet interfaces on R1 the same? If no, explain the differences. Well, looking at them, we came up and we said that we have the 2 gigabit and 2 fast Ethernet. What's showing here is that we have two interfaces, or sorry, we have 4 interfaces that can go up to 100 megs, and we have 2 interfaces that can go up to gigabits per second. So are they the same? No. We have 4 that are fast Ethernet, which is 100 megabit per second max, and 2 gigabit Ethernet, which is 1,000 megabit. There you go. Display the routing table on R1. What command displays the contents of the routing table? Once again, we're displaying information, so it starts off with the show command. The protocol we are using here at layer 3 is IP, so show IP, and then we want routing information. And that would be show IP route. Show IP route. Get us that answer. Go ahead and type it down here. And there we are. We have a bunch of information about our routes and how our devices work. B1, how many connected routes are there? That starts with the C. Once again, if you look up here, this is connected in our codes up here. This is represented by a C. How many C's do we have down here listed? We have 1 C that is listed. Which route is listed at this point? Well, there is only one route, and that's the connected one at this point. That's connected up to our serial 0. That's directly connected. And so the only route that's connected is this one, which is 209.165.224/30. How does a router handle a packet destined for a network that is not listed in the routing table? Well, If it's not listed in this routing table, we can't send to it. And so we can only list we can only forward to networks we know about. If we don't know about it, we drop the packet. And our answer here is a router only send packets to a network listed in the routing table. If a network is not listed, the packet will be, and when they say a packet will be dropped, that's just a fancy name for saying we're going to delete the packet. I hope you're liking this episode on practical configuration examples. Leave a comment on what you think about these configuration examples. If you still have a question or comment, please let me know below. You can also visit my website at KevTechify.com for all of my details and how to get these episodes in video and podcast form. On to part 2 here, configuring the actual interfaces. Step 1, configure the gigabit Ethernet 00 on R1. Enter the following command. Open up our configuration window. We're on R1. We have getting into global configuration mode, so we type in config T, takes us in global configuration mode. Then it's interface gig. I use tab completion there. We want to configure a 0/0 interface at that point in time. We want, and notice how our prompt has changed. Now we're configuring an interface. IF is short for interface. We want to set the IP address. So that command is IP space address space, and then we put in our IP address 192.168.10.1, and then we follow that up with the subnet mask. If we did not put the subnet mask in there, it would give us an error at that point in time. Now, one last thing we have to do is we actually have to turn on that port. All physical ports are off by default. We have to go ahead and turn that port on. Now, the command to do that is no shutdown. If Cisco would ask me what I would have called it to turn on a port, I probably would not have said no shutdown, but that's what we have. And to turn a port on, you do the opposite of turning it off, and you put the word no in front of it. So we have no shutdown at that point in time. Notice when we do that, we get some updates. So here we have now changed to state up, meaning we've configured that, we've turned it on, and our line protocol is now up also. This signifies that our devices are properly up and they're configured. At this point, I go ahead and hit enter. It gives me a couple more clear lines. It's good practice to put a description in there. It does help. How we put it in a description is just put the word description and then whatever we want to say. And we're going to describe what this is connected to. It's a LAN connection to switch 1. And that'll just help you when you go and you do a show running config, see what's in memory. It'll just remind you on what this device is connected into. Now R1 should be able to ping PC1. You can type exit twice to get us out of the configuration for the interface and get out of global config, or at this point, we can just go ahead and type N. Notice it takes us right to privilege exec mode, gives us the system update saying there's been some changes. I hit enter a couple of times to give us a clear work area. In my clear area, we can ping it. We can get the IP address, well, the instructions tell us, but the IP address we can get from our address chart, once again, is right here. We are pinging 192. 168.10.10. It may error out the first one because it had to go through the ARP process to look up the MAC address as it relates to an IP address. But there we go. If we do it a second time, just an up arrow, hit go, it all 5 works because it didn't have to do that ARP process at that point in time. Step 2, configure the remaining gigabit Ethernet interfaces on R1 and R2. Use the information below, enter in the IP address, and put in a configuration. So we have done, once again, we are configuring the remaining gigabit. Okay, on R1, we need to get into global configuration mode, config T. We need to get into the interface gigabit, and I'm using tab completion. We need to go into the second one, 0/1. Our command there is IP space address space. Put in the IP address of 192.168.11.1 with the subnet mask 255.255.255.0. There we go. Do no shutdown on that. You can see that we now changed our line to up and our line protocol to up. That's a good sign. We can go ahead and end out. Takes us there. Next thing we need to do is jump on R2. So I'm going to go ahead and close this. Click on R2. Notice how our red triangles are turning green. That's a good thing. They're still going through a negotiation with switch 2, but eventually this is all going to turn green. We are now going to go configure our gigabit Ethernets on R2. We have red triangles there, which are bad. They're pointing down. That means those interfaces are down. Let's go see if we can turn them into green. So I go ahead and click on that. Open up my CLI. I make this window bigger just out of force of habit. Press return to get started. Logging in. Our line console password is Cisco. Then to get into privileged exec mode, we go ahead and type enable and a password of class at that point in time. We need to go in and configure our 2 gigabit Ethernet interfaces at this point in time. Go into global configuration mode. Config T. Then interface. Gig 0/0 at that point in time. Notice once again, our prompt now says we're configuring an interface at this point. IP address. Starting it off, we get our IP address down here of 10.1.1. Whoops, click in the window. 10.1.1.1 with the subnet mask of 255.255.255.0. Do a no shutdown. We get messages that we're up. Now, we're going to go and configure gig 01 on R2 next. We're going to go ahead and configure this interface. Notice what prompt we're in. We're on R2. We're configuring an interface. We don't have to type exit. We can just go right to that interface. So you can change interfaces without having to exit out and typing in what interface. So at this point in time, we want to go to interface gig G/1. Go ahead and set our IP address to 10.1.2.1. Incomplete command. I forgot my subnet mask. So up arrow space 255.255.255.0. There we go. Do a no shutdown to turn that on again. That point in time, once again, our change state, we went to up, and our line protocols, we have went up. We'll exit out. Exit out takes us down to privilege exec mode. There we go. And verify our device configurations. The last command we used was a show IP int brief. There we go. And now we can look on here. Gig 00 is 10.1.1.1. Status is up. Protocol is up. Go down here once again, confirm. Gig 00 is 10.1.1.1. Looking over here, we on R2, gig Ethernet 0/1 is status is up, our line protocol is up, and our IP address for that is 10.1.2.1. That's exactly what we have right here. So we have now confirmed our configurations. Step 3, back up the configuration to NVRAM. What we're going to do is take our running configuration, what we have in RAM, and we're going to copy it to our startup config file. That is stored in NVRAM, so when we turn on the device next time or reboots it, it loads that configuration in. Before we do that, look at our arrows. They went from red to green now. You should have all green on it. Once again, it does take a little bit to go from amber to yellow on the connections closest to the switch, but eventually those should turn to green just like mine did. Back to our question. What command did you use to save that? I'm going to go ahead and open that up. Expand this window out a little bit and enter several times. The command we used, once again, is a copy command. We're going to take it from RAM, which is our running dash config, and we're going to copy to NVRAM, which is our startup config. That command, copy space running dash config space startup dash config. Copy our memory, our RAM, into our non-volatile RAM. Next time we reboot, it's going to be there. It's going to ask us, is that what we want to call it? Hit enter if that's correct. On my screen, it's correct. Copies it over. The short version of that, once again, is COP run start. COP run start. Go ahead and enter. Is that what you want to call it? Startup config. Is that the operating system knows that's what the file needs to be called? Yes, it is. Go ahead and hit enter. We have saved it. Just a little bit shorter way of doing that. Part 3, verify the configuration. Use verification commands to check your interface. Use the show IP interface brief command on R1 and R2 to quickly verify the interfaces are configured with the correct IP addresses and are active. Question, how many interfaces are on R1 and R2 configured with IP addresses and in the up and up state? Go ahead and click on R1. Brings us over to where we left off in our privileged exec mode. If you're not there, you have to get in there. You want us to use the command show IP in brief. Go ahead and list it out. Question, how many interfaces are configured with IP addresses and up in the status and protocol? How I do that is I look for up and up first, and then I look for how many IP addresses. Looking here at R1. R1 has 3, and R2 has, I'm going to go ahead, open up R2, enter in our command of show IP brief, show IP interface brief. We have up and up for the first 3. We have IP addresses on the first 3. And so R2 has 3 interfaces also. What part of the interface configuration is not displayed in the command output? If we look here, the configuration information is the IP address. Remember, when we entered in our IP address, we entered in our IP address with another part. That other part was the subnet mask. Does not display the subnet mask here in show IP interface brief. The subnet mask. There we go. What command can you use to verify this part of the configurations? Well, there are actually several commands you can use. First command here is show running dash config. Go down to your interfaces. I'm hitting the space bar, came down to here, and if we look at the interface here, we have our IP address and our subnet mask. Subnet mask is the last portion, so show running config, that works. Another command would be show interfaces. Get down here, Show interfaces. There we are. If we look, here's gig Ethernet 00. This is our address. Then we have a /24. Remember, the slash number is how many bits in the subnet mask. That means there's 24 bits in the subnet mask. 24 is equal to 8 groups of 3. That would be equal to 2.55, 2.55, 2. Wow. That is equal to 255.255.255.0. And so another command, like we just showed, is show interfaces. B, use the show IP route command on both R1 and R2 to verify the current routing tables and answer the following questions. How many connected routes using the C codes do you see on each router? R1. The command they want us to use is show IP route. Show IP route. How many C commands do we see? How many connected routes? We have 1, 2, 3. We have the more sign here, but it just brought us up one more line. 1 has 3 C's, and our 2 has up the command line for our 2. Show IP route. We have 1C, 2C, and 3 C's. Our 2 also has 3 C's. There we go. How many OSPF routes that use the O code you see on each router? Well, let's pull up router 1. We have here 1 O, and we have a second O on R1. R1 has 2 O's, and R2 has, pull up our command line prompt window here again. Looking here, we have 1 route, 2 routes. R2 has 2 O's. There we go. If a router knows all the routes in the network, then the number of connected routes and the dynamically learned routes through OSPF should equal the total number of LANs and WANs. How many LANs and WANs are there in the topology? Once again, that would be the total of the connected networks and the total of the networks learned from OSPF. That would be 5 at this point in time. And both of them have 5 going. Correction. Oh. Does this number match the number of C and O routes shown here? Yes, it does. Step 2, test end-to-end connectivity across the network. Now be able to ping from any PC to any other PC on the network. In addition, you should be able to ping the active interfaces on the routers. For example, ping from the command line on PC1, PC4, from the command line on R2, ping PC2. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pick PC1. Get into desktop, open up the command prompt, and I'm just going to go and ping all of these IP addresses right here in this table. Go ahead and ping all of them to show you that it works. Start off by the word ping space 192.168.10.1. There we go. All 4 work that time. Next one, ping 192.168.11.1. There we go. Pings all 4 times are working. Excellent. Next one, ping. And then we're down to this address of 209.165.200.225. There we go. That works. And I'm just going to continue down through. I'm going to go and ping all 3 of these on. Ping all 3 of these on R2. Ping. 10.1.1.1. There we go. Ping 10.1.2.1. There we go. Ping the final 3rd IP address on R2, which is a 209.165.200.226. There you go. And then the last thing is to ping all the PCs. I'm on PC 1, but I'm just going to go ahead and ping it for good luck, which is 192.168.10. I'm pinging myself. That works. Excellent. Ping 192.168.11.10. That is PC2. There it is. It took a second to find it, but eventually it did. If I up arrow, do the command again, all 4 are going to work. Doesn't have to do the ARP lookup, the address resolution protocol, IP address to MAC address lookups, because it did that already. On the pinging PC3, which is 10.1.1.10. There we go. It's going to have to do the ARP process. A couple of devices don't know the IP to MAC addresses. There we are. If we do it a second time, all 4 will work. There you go. And let's ping PC4. 10.1.2.10. I'll do our ARP lookup again. So don't panic right away if it fails. There we go. We're 3 out of 4. First one failed. If we do that same one again, all 4 will work. That takes us to the end of the lab. That was Packet Tracer Lab 10.3.4, connect a router to a LAN. It was my pleasure to provide you with this wonderful episode on configuration examples. If you like this episode and you got value out of it, please click that like button, give a 5-star rating, leave a comment. This all helps me bring you more great content. Please take a minute to subscribe to my channel. All my socials and contact information are on my website, KevTechify.com. There you can find out how to get all these episodes in video and podcast form. Thank you so much for watching this episode of my series on practical configuration examples for the CCNA. I've created 4 wonderful playlists for you on the CCNA. These episodes, I go through all the concepts that Cisco calls out for the CCNA. Once again, I'm Kevin. This is KevTechify. I'll see you next time for another great adventure.